Imagine the scene. It's the 1960s, the summer of love. How many Americans realize that monkeys are being taken up to a 14,000-foot high mountain and experimented with so that they could get an advantage about how to launch a space program? I think if they knew that, it actually would have been horrified.
Using animals, sadly, was a very valuable step towards getting humans into space. You simply couldn't avoid doing these kind of experiments. And of course, there were deaths along the way, and you wouldn't get away with that if it was humans, obviously. So this could have been the end of the space program.
In the early 1950s, Barcroft Station was a US Navy classified research facility. When the decision was made to close it down, the University of California stepped in to take over the site. With backing from NASA, Barcroft was converted to play a crucial role in the space program, using a unique colony of chimpanzees. University historian Daniel Pritchett has uncovered their forgotten story.
This was built in 1951, and they started gathering meteorological data at that point and started raising laboratory animals up here. Started studying the chimpanzees' physiology because they were planning to send chimps up into space before they sent humans. They needed to understand about chimp physiology and also develop monitoring devices so they could monitor the health and condition of the chimps while they were up in space.
The saga of Ham, the little chimp, has been carefully selected, thoroughly examined, and patiently tutored to help mankind discover whether living creatures can survive travel in space.
You can get valuable data by just doing stuff on the ground with animals to simulate what you expect the space environment to be like. You will learn a lot more by controlled tests on the ground rather than just sending series and series of expensive rockets that maybe you don't recover the data back from.
If you want to test the effect of very high acceleration forces, you can do that on animals. If you want to test what harsh landings are like, you can do that on animals, and indeed they did. Even though there was knowledge about humans at high altitudes, what they didn't have at that point was knowledge about how the human body responded in a weightless environment. So those kind of experiments you can conduct on animals, and of course you do want to do that before you conduct them on humans.
This is an authentic relic from the early 60s, from the period when we were training chimps and macaques to go into outer space. This is a 55-gallon drum that's been fitted out with a little plexiglass seat, and it's a space capsule simulator. It's got insulation on the outside. It's fitted with catheters, which were surgically implanted in the animals, and this was for them to get accustomed to what they'd be doing in outer space.
With the chimpanzees sealed inside them, the tiny barrel capsules were suspended beneath a helicopter and flown to Barcroft Station. It was the beginning of an extended series of experiments to record their physical responses to stress and changing atmospheric pressure.
We're now on the ground floor of Barcroft Station. In the 60s, the ground floor had animal colonies. They had chimps and macaques here, and they studied the physiology of these animals, and they developed telemetry devices to monitor their conditions of their bodies and their health. Here, they could look at the effects of high elevation on the animals. They would train them to some extent, get them accustomed to sitting in little chairs, because when they put them in space capsules, they were confined.
The American approach, where you can train the animals to do things that are more similar to what humans might do in space, press buttons, pull levers, and so on. And it also means that you can gather data that helps you with the design of the cabin that you will ultimately use to put humans into space. Different countries sent up different animals, sometimes for obvious reasons, sometimes for less obvious reasons. For example, if you wanted to send animals up and you knew they weren't going to come back, you might send something like mice. But of course, you want to do experiments on larger animals too, and in Sputnik 2, the Soviets sent up the dog Laika. And they had a policy where they took dogs off the street. So the idea was that you would take animals that were used to living a harsh life, lack of food, lack of water, and therefore would be better adapted to the kind of experiments that they wanted to test.
You can simulate temperature changes. You can put people in centrifuges who experience high Gs like in a rocket takeoff, but you can't do everything. We realize that even today. That's why we're still doing experiments at the International Space Station. Astronauts are guinea pigs in that regard. We're trying to understand how the human body is affected by weightless environment, how space radiation affects us. We are still finding our way with a lot of these things.
Chimpanzees were one thing, but what about human astronauts? From the very beginning of the V2 launch tests in New Mexico, scientists had been trying to find out whether manned space flight was possible.
This 30-foot-high apparatus provides data on man's reaction to blast-off buffeting and weightlessness and the effects of vertical acceleration. While the physical and psychological effects of prolonged vibration are studied, a breathing apparatus measures reaction of lungs and other organs.
In 1961, the Soviet Union's Yuri Gagarin became the first man in space when he orbited the Earth in Vostok 1. Immediately, the pressure was on the United States to rival the USSR's achievement.